Welcome to Under the Hood, the Faculty Position Series. May these tips propel you along your journey. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to part 4 of the Faculty Position Series. This discussion will be about the full on-site interview, particularly the virtual version of the on-site interview. So if you're listening to this video and you have a full interview set up, meaning that you have progressed to the final round of applications, congratulations. This is a really big accomplishment and you should be very proud of yourself. Okay? So if you didn't know, your invitation to give a seminar for a faculty job search, that seminar can be listed as an invited talk on your CV, and it can be listed in your department seminars section of your CV. All right, so once again, due to the pandemic, many of the 2020 through 2022 interviews were entirely virtual, and my UC Berkeley interview was also entirely virtual. With that, let's jump into some of the details about the full on-site interview. First, let's talk about the purpose of the full on-site interview. First, this virtual visit, is designed to allow the faculty at the department that's hosting your visit to learn about your research, teaching, and service, both your experiences and your plans. So once again, this gives context to your rented materials, and it allows for everyone outside of the search committee to also get a chance to get to know you. So during this visit, everyone in the department will be evaluating you based on your presentation skills, your presentation style, and because everyone gets a vote. At the end of the day, they will vote on that short list of candidates. So once again, for your site visit, it's pretty important to be personable, present your authentic self, and hopefully that authentic self is a kind and friendly person. The other thing that's evaluated is your stamina, or it's not formally evaluated, but if you lose steam at the end of this full on-site interview, even though it's virtual, people may notice. And so this is a chance for you to demonstrate that you can be engaging and attentive and fairly energetic throughout the entire process. Also, you'll need to be professional during all parts of the interview, whether you're talking to a student or if you're talking to an administrator. Again, at this stage, the faculty and the students will still be looking to evaluate your fit. So even if you've made it to the final round, they are still trying to answer the question, are you the best fit for the department? And are you the person that meets most of the needs that have been discussed in faculty meetings and other retreats, etc. So remember, even though you've made it to the final round, there may still be question marks about whether or not you're appropriate for this position. And finally, this also gives you an opportunity to meet potentially your future coworkers. And so you should also be evaluating fit. You should be paying attention to how various faculty talk about their positions, and specifically the assistant professors. Are they overworked? Do they have unreasonable teaching expectations? If you're a BIPOC scholar, what is the feel that you get from any existing BIPOC scholars in the department? Are there any at all? Okay, so this is a chance for you to evaluate um, potentially the culture. Is your hiring chair kind to you? Are they friendly? Do they talk about mentorship? Do they put DEI at the forefront? And it's at this stage that you actually have the liberty to recuse yourself from a search or withdraw your application at this stage if you feel like the vibes are just not going the way you think they should go. And I do know of an instance of a candidate pulling out of the search because of some uncharacteristic or not so nice things that were said during this stage of the interview process. So once again, the department is evaluating you, and you should also be evaluating how you think you would enjoy working in that department. The next thing I'll discuss is schedule and logistics. So how does this full on-site virtual interview go down? Well, usually the activities are spread out over 1 to 3 days. And all of the activities are scheduled via Zoom. So likely the department coordinator will send you a schedule. All right, and so it will be a schedule with 30 to 60-minute one-on-one meetings, group meetings, seminars. All of this will be populated in your schedule, and they could have that ready for you as early as 2 weeks or as late as the day before your actual interview. So what you can expect in this schedule are meetings with faculty, your department chair or your potential future department chair, and various university administrators. You also may have a chat with a student hiring committee if it exists, or a student organization. And so usually these are about 1 hour long. And finally, what you can expect is to have a 60 to 90-minute research seminar scheduled, which I'll talk about in just a minute, and a 60 to 120 minutes, so 1 to 2 hour vision talk / chalk talk, and I'll explain what those are. Okay, so that's the schedule and how things look for a full on-site virtual interview. So first I will talk about the research seminar. So in my opinion, the research seminar is probably one of the more important components of your full interview. So your hiring committee will tell you exactly what they expect of this seminar, but in general, it's scheduled for an hour or an hour and a half, but you're asked to give your presentation from 30 to 60 minutes. And then the remaining of the time is used for question and answer. So for my Berkeley interview, I was asked to speak for 35 minutes, and then we have 15 minutes for Q&A. Now, I want to talk about a little bit of advice that I received for my research seminar, and that is to create an arc for your research journey. Okay? And an arc can be defined as the chronological construction of the plot in a story. In other words, what is the logical flow in your research experience? Did graduate research projects lead to new ideas for your faculty research? Did your work follow a natural progression of ideas? Did you abruptly change directions at some point along your early career in response to any global shifts such as the pandemic or any other global event? And so you should be able to describe how your past and current research flows into your future research direction chronologically, and hopefully all of that research centers around one central theme. So I'll give an example of the arc for my research. and I'm going to summarize it in the following way. So the arc for my story would be such that air quality models are useful for understanding source-receptor relationships and for planning future emissions mitigation. However, there are uncertainties in how the models capture the lived and individual experiences of the people who are exposed to this pollution. So this is a very critical missing link in between air quality models and exposure, and this becomes especially problematic for environmental justice applications. Okay, so we need to think about developing the need for more local scale approaches and scientific analyses. Therefore, I branched into wearable sensing, which is an accessible and efficient way to fill the knowledge gaps that surround us characterizing human exposures. And this can be especially effective for the advocacy of community issues. So that's the arc of my research. It covers and includes my graduate research, my postdoctoral research, and it provides clarity on how I branched into low-cost sensing. Okay, so that's the story arc, and that story arc was explained in about 30 slides. So the next thing we're going to talk about is how you should organize your research seminar slides. I recommend, in terms of pace, that if you are a fast talker, that you plan for 1 slide per minute. So if you're able to, if they give you a 35-minute time slot, you should have about 35 slides. If you talk a little bit slower and you get through your ideas a little bit more slowly, then I suggest that you have 0.5 to 0.75 slides per minute. So essentially, if you have a 30-minute talk and you are a slow talker, then perhaps you only need 15 to 20 slides. You should have about 2 to 3 main sections to cover your story arc. So are you able to devise 2 to 3 themes around the research in your arc? And if so, you should present your slides that way. I also recommend that you have some sort of indication of progression in the slides in the form of slides with subtitles that indicate that you're switching over to the next subject, or you can have a progress bar that changes colors or changes length as you get through every slide. The other thing I recommend is that you embed QR codes into your slides so that you can redirect your audience to any papers that you've published that you want to share with them, or any supplementary information that you may want to share. So in the event that you don't actually get an offer, unfortunately, at least people will still have a chance to engage with your research and potentially cite that and reach out to you for collaborations either way. Now, just a few best practices that I think are important for your research seminar. You may have heard this before, but you should probably use the hourglass approach for explaining your research. So first you'll start out broadly talking about background and motivation. This information should be accessible to your student population in the audience. So it's broad enough and enough to be understood by your non-tenure track audience members. Then you're going to narrow in terms of technical rigor into the methods and the results of your research, and really about half to a third of the people should be able to fully follow this in a really detailed way, because this requires technical expertise that should go beyond that of the regular student population. but still be clear enough such that if someone wanted to go Google what you said, they'll know where to find it. And then after you discuss the specifics of your research, methods, and results, you then zoom back out and talk about the broader implications, broader impacts, and significance of the work that you just talked about. So while everyone in the audience may not specifically understand or know how to replicate what you've done, when you've completed that middle part of your discussion, people should know why it's important and why those findings are of significance. Okay? So you can expect that the people attending your research seminar will be students, faculty, and perhaps an administrator or two. And finally, I always recommend practice many, many times in front of different people, and then time yourself. So this is the time where you want to really stick to the time that you've been given. Be aware of your slide progression and slide transitions. If you have animations, know exactly what's coming next on the slide, and you should never be surprised or caught off guard by anything that comes up in your slides. You should know your slides front and back. So that concludes my tips for the research seminar. The next major public talk or private talk that you'll be asked to give is a vision seminar. Okay? The vision seminar is meant to describe your future plans as a member of the faculty. So you could be asked to speak anywhere from 15 to 60 minutes, and then the rest of the time will be used for question and answer. I recommend that you follow the prompt that they give you for this seminar very closely. And if you are unclear about the expectations for this talk, this is a really good time to follow up with the search committee chair or the department chair if the chair has been involved. Usually they are not. Usually you're talking to someone from the search committee. So okay. Now your slides. The slides for the vision seminar, if you're asked to include visual aids, should also follow the 1 slide per minute for fast talkers, 0.5 to 0.75 slides for slower talkers. For your vision talk, I recommend that you use the following proportions for your slides. So 75% of the slides should talk about future research plans, and in those research plans, you should have the graphical and visual representation of the 3 project abstracts that you talked about in your written materials. And so I'm linking back to that video in the card above. All right, so it should just reflect whatever you wrote in your written application. Then you should have 20% of your slides for teaching. Okay, and so this can also reflect the pedagogy statement that you put in your written materials. You can talk about courses that you plan to teach or that you would be willing and able to teach, and you may talk about your planned courses. And finally, about 10% of your slides, hopefully this is 1 or 2 slides, can be dedicated to the service and the DEI efforts that you plan to take upon being offered a position as part of the department. Again, you can use progressions, graphics in your vision seminar slides, and you can also embed QR codes. Now, finally, I'll talk about the best practices that I think will add a little bit of edge to your vision seminar. So first, once again, incorporate your lab's brand. So this is a perfect time to debut if you haven't already debuted your brand in the screening interview. You can for sure debut your lab's name, logo, and contact information in your vision seminar. Usually, the vision seminar is not open to the public, and it's only open to a faculty audience or the student committee representatives. This is another talk that you need to really practice over and over. Brush up on any fundamentals that you may have, because the vision seminar usually includes an extended question and answer session. This is the place where people are going to really hone in on figuring out if you've thought deeply about your fit in the department, what your contributions are going to be, and this is where they're going to evaluate research maturity. Okay? Are you familiar with the funding sources that are important for your line of work? Are you familiar with who on campus does research that is most similar to yours? Are you familiar with the frontier of your research and who else is doing the work? Are you competitive in the space? They may also ask you at this point, how do you plan to run your lab? How many students would you like to mentor? What type of equipment will you need for the work that you want to do? How much lab space? You may get questions as detailed as that, because in this vision seminar, you should be able to relay that you have completely envisioned what you're going to do and who you're going to be, the first day of employment. And so please take some time to think carefully about what you want to discuss in the vision talk. Now I'll discuss the chalk talk. The chalk talk is similar to your vision talk, except for the format and how you may be expected to relay the information. So once again, a chalk talk is a meeting of you and the search committee and perhaps other faculty to talk about your research vision. All right. And in some cases, this chalk talk may be a teaching demonstration. It's rare to have a teaching demonstration for a research faculty position, but I've seen it done. So in the case of a chalk talk, you may be asked to present for 15 to 60 minutes, and then the rest of the remaining time is reserved for question and answer. So if you are told that you're asked to give a chalk talk, I highly suggest that you reach out and get clarity on the purpose and format of this chalk talk if it is not clear in the instructions. So in terms of purpose, is this a chance for you to talk about your research, or are you going to be giving a teaching demonstration to the students? In terms of format, you should clarify whether or not this is an electronic presentation that is augmented with a visual aid such as PowerPoint slides, or is this a whiteboard/tablet demonstration? So I'll talk about slides and then I'll talk about whiteboard. So in the event that you have to provide slides for this chalk talk, then this is much like the vision seminar, except it's branded as a chalk talk. When it comes to whether it's a whiteboard or tablet demonstration, this will require you to make some adjustments. If it's a whiteboard chalk talk that's virtual, you'll have to set up your camera and your lighting, and you may have to invest in a whiteboard to show that you can do live writing in good lighting and in a compelling way to engage people online. Or if you're allowed to, you can actually project your tablet if you have one. So I recommend having a tablet like an iPad for teaching. It is a great teaching tool. And you can hook this up to your computer and you can project a tablet. And if you have software downloaded on the tablet that allows you to write in PowerPoint slides or write on blank sheets of paper live, you can actually do your chalk talk demonstration that way. Okay? In the event that you have to do live writing, have this 3-step communication style when it comes to this type of presentation. So first, you want to verbally make your point. Okay, whatever it is you're trying to relay, you say it, and then you write your point in shorthand, or you draw a graphic to demonstrate what you're saying. And then after you're done writing, you re-engage with your audience, reiterate what you said, summarize what you said, and if there's time, you can ask if anyone has any questions about what you just said. All right? And so if you have to do a whiteboard or a tablet demonstration, you really should have your notes written out ahead of time, somewhat like you're preparing for a lecture, but instead, if they're asking you for a research vision, you'll have notes about your research vision. So for this chalk talk, I recommend that you practice this many, 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 many times in front of, once again, a varied audience, and practice again to yourself. As I wrap up the discussion about the chalk talk, I want to reiterate, if it's unclear what the purpose of your chalk talk is, what the format of your chalk talk is, please reach out, because you don't want to show up with one thing in mind and then the committee has something else completely in mind. I find that the chalk talk is the most vague version of a vision seminar that could be scheduled for a candidate. So be careful with this one. And lastly, we'll talk about your one-on-one meetings or your group meetings. So your schedule will be filled in with anywhere from 15 to 60-minute meetings. Unfortunately, you probably won't have a lunch meeting because this is a virtual on-site meeting. And when you get your itinerary, no matter when you get it, even if it's the day before, set aside some time to research everyone that is signed up to meet with you. You want to be able to speak with every person that is on your schedule with some level of familiarity. Okay, again, this demonstrates that you care about being personable, you are interested in your colleagues, and you are doing your best to make sure that you will fit right in and contribute to collaborative efforts in the department. So what kinds of things can you expect to talk about with the different people that you might meet? So when you meet with other faculty, obviously they'll ask you questions about your research. They may bring up collaborative opportunities if they are interested in working with you in the future. They may talk to you about the progression to tenure for junior faculty in their department, and they may get into a discussion of department culture and expectations, for instance, for teaching and for service. And in fact, I recommend that candidates ask about teaching and service requirements for people who have not been promoted to tenure. Then you'll talk to your chair. So the chair will likely also reiterate expectations for research, teaching, and they may ask you about what facilities needs you have so that in the event that you're hired, they can preempt the asks that they'll need from the campus, whether you'll need a lab renovation. And so at this stage, they will want to know if you are a computational person, if you require a biosafety lab, and if you have specialized equipment needs. They may also tell you about next steps and when you can expect to hear back, and what the offer process may look like. And you can actually perhaps ask your chair, what can I expect in terms of what happens after this step? That's totally okay. When you speak to the dean, if you're scheduled to, most likely they will talk to you about general expectations for faculty, and they will talk to you about a vision for the college. If you are scheduled to meet with students in the form of students that volunteer to meet with you, student organizations, or the student hiring committee, they're pretty much evaluating if they want you as a professor, if they think that you're knowledgeable about your subject, if you can teach well, if you communicate well, and if you're personable. All right, and so in some cases, the student opinion can be very influential in choosing the final candidate. In summary, that is the overview of what you can expect from a full virtual on-site interview. Okay, so some things that I want to address before we end this discussion are reimbursements, and you may want to ask your contact about whether or not childcare costs and costs associated with you having to book a hotel to have a quiet place to uh, go through this interview with over a couple days, ask ahead of time whether or not these expenses are reimbursable. Okay, so this may be an option for you if you really need to change up your environment to get through this interview successfully. So this concludes the discussion of the full on-site interview. And remember, dress the part, have on your business attire, remain engaged throughout the entire process. Make sure that when you're going through your schedule and progressing through these meetings that you get up, you stretch out, have your coffee, have water available for yourself, and eat a healthy lunch that day, because we want you to maintain your engagement throughout the entire process. Good luck to all of you that are preparing for your on-site interviews, and drop any questions that you have below in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.